Hi, and welcome back to Wednesday Wisdom here at Judaica.com. I'm Mazik, this is Chana, and we are excited.
Yes.
What are we excited about, Chana?
Lag Baom'er.
Lag Baom'er, that's right. So, do you tell us a little bit about the Omer?
So, we start counting the Omer on the second night.
Second night of Pesach.
Yes, second night of Pesach.
We count
49 days?
49 days, all the way from Pesach. We have it's a special mitzvah in the Torah to count the days between after the first day of Passover to the holiday of Shavuot. So the holiday of Shavuot happens 50 days after Passover. It's the only holiday that's mentioned in the Torah that does not have a date.
Exactly.
It has only a counted date. So you have to be very careful to count every day.
Yep.
And Lag Baom'er is the 33rd day. Lamed Gimel is the gematria for 33, and we count. I have a little bit of information about the 33rd day of the Omer. Do you want to hear about it a little bit?
I do, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Inform me. Wisdom.
All right, awesome. Wisdom. All right, it's Wednesday Wisdom. That's right. So it goes back to the story for why Lag Baom'er is such a big holiday. It goes back to the time period around the destruction of the Second Temple, which was roughly 2,000 years ago. Story starts with Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was one of the greatest sages of the Mishnaic period, is known as a Tana. And what made him so great. In fact, this actually works back to our connection to talking about weddings.
Okay.
So Rabbi Akiva used to be a field hand. He was illiterate. Okay. And when he was about 40 years old, his future wife, whose father was the landowner that Rabbi Akiva worked on, he was known as Akiva at that point, not Rabbi Akiva.
Right.
Noticed his piety and was like, you know what? That's the guy for me. I'm going to get married to him. Now, you can imagine her father was a very wealthy fellow, and they lived in outside of Yerushalayim. Mm-hmm. Was none too pleased about this match, and he was not happy. So they ended up getting married. She ended up marrying him, and again, he was illiterate. But what happened was that the father, by the way, disowned her. He cut her off. He was not happy. Yeah. So what did they do? So Rabbi Akiva, they were living really poor. Mm-hmm. In fact, the story is told that they used straw to sleep on. That's what they used straw to sleep on. And they got a visitor one night who asked to borrow straw because they didn't have any to sleep on. And Rabbi Akiva and his wife came to the conclusion that we're poor, but there are still poorer people in this world. So if I'm not so poor, then you know what, Rabbi Akiva, you go and study. And Rabbi Akiva spent a long time studying.
Yes.
He spent, I believe it was 12 years. 12 years studying. He went away to where did he go? To Bnei Brak to go study. And then he came back. 12 years later, he comes back, and he's bringing 12,000 students with him. 12,000. This guy became a really big dude in those 12 years. He's walking down the street, and he gets right outside his house, and his wife is talking to her friend, and he overhears the conversation. He hasn't seen her in 12 years, and he overhears the conversation, and his wife is saying to her friend, saying, "I wish he would go back and study more." And so after 12 years, without even crossing the door, without even seeing his wife, turns around and goes back. And next time he comes back is in 12 years later. This is now 24 years.
That's a long time.
It's a long time, but this time he comes back with 24,000 students. The Gemara talks about 12,000 pairs of students. And he comes back and he greets his wife, and actually he encounters on the trip back to his wife, he encounters his father-in-law. And his father-in-law is like, Rabbi Akiva's here, the great sage. I want him to annul the marriage of my daughter to this, this schnook that she married. And he goes to her, Rabbi Akiva realizes that his father doesn't even know who he is.
Right.
Says, would you annul the marriage if you knew that he was going to grow into a great Talmid Chacham, a great sage? And the father-in-law answers, even if he would only have learned one law, I wouldn't want the marriage, and I wouldn't have taken a vow to annul the marriage. So So Rabbi Akiva then reveals himself. That's the big reveal. He reveals himself, and his father-in-law is so impressed and so proud of the fact that Rabbi Akiva becomes who he is, and he gives him half of all of his wealth. So it's a pretty big, fine. It's a nice. It only took 24
right,
years. But,
nice little down payment.
Right.
There.
I mean, that's some serious investment in your father-in-law. Okay, good. I'm lucky. I like my father-in-law. He's a good guy. So, but what does that do to Lag Baom'er? So Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 students that he amassed. The Gemara tells us that they were very learned, but they were not very kind to each other, and they lacked basic respect or derech eretz towards each other, and they were afflicted with a plague. And in fact, those 24,000 students, they all died.
Wow.
They all died, and the reason why Lag Baom'er is a big holiday is because it's on the 33rd day of the Omer, on this day, that the students stopped dying. And actually Rabbi Akiva went from 25. He left with only 5 students, and one of his 5 students. This gets to the second part of Lag Baom'er. Why is also Lag Baom'er so special? Lag Baom'er also happens to be the Yurtzeit, or the day of that we remember, the day the passing of one of his most famous students is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Mm-hmm. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whom, if you're in Israel right about now, you might be in Meron, whereas Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is buried. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was probably one of the greatest Talmid Chacham of all time. Mm-hmm. And in fact, it's he who is sort of the progenitor of the modern day Kabbalah. What we have written down, the Zohar, it's the tradition teaches us that he's the author of the Kabbalah.
Right.
And again, it's his Yurtzeit tonight in America. Tonight, obviously in Israel, it's happening right now.
Yeah.
And he's buried actually right outside Sfat. Mm-hmm. Right, he's buried actually with his son.
Yes.
His son, and we can go through Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai stories as well. Right. He was also a pretty amazing fellow. He had to hide out from the Romans. The Romans were after him, and he hid out from them for 13 years in a cave.
Yes.
A lot of in a cave, and he ate carob. We had carob on the show, didn't we?
Yes,
we brought it in for Tu B'Shvat, right?
Yes.
So he survived on a carob tree. It was whatever. The Gemara talks about that, and in fact, a little tidbit. The Gemara speaks about the story of Lag Baom'er, the 33rd day of the Omer, the story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Mm-hmm. Speaks about it on the 33rd page of the Masechta of Shabbos. So it's a little bit of interesting tidbits of history that we have here. So, but in order to commemorate the concept of the Omer, and we obviously we exhibit signs of mourning in the Omer, right? Especially from Pesach until Lag Baom'er, we don't cut our hair, mm-hmm. and that's why I look a little beastly. That's why my wife is not happy. She's very excited about tonight because I can finally trim my beard and cut my hair. We, don't listen to music. Don't do a lot of public things that we exhibit a lot of signs of mourning mm-hmm. that we would generally do in the rest of the year. Like when someone is in sitting Shiva, we do a lot of those outward motions to signify that we're sad about what happened, and then on Lag Baom'er we're excited about the rebirth and the renewal. So in thinking about that, and in thinking about the fact that there was the lack of respect between the students, mm-hmm. which led to obviously their downfall, right. I think that what do we have here?
We have the Chafetz Chaim, which looks like a daily companion.
Yes. So we have a lot of books on our website that discuss sort of the concept of respect right. and of positive speech, and an understanding that you can hurt people with speech. And the Chafetz Chaim was a great scholar. He lived about 100 years ago. He was he wrote the Mishnah Berurah. He has a lot of halacha, but what is he known for? I mean, even more so than halacha is really being careful about the mitzvah to not speak lashon hara. Yep. We should not be telling bad things about other people, and that sort of goes hand in hand with having respect, I think, for your fellow man. And I mean, I know in my family, I talk to my kids all the time about having respect for their siblings, right? It's a little bit difficult when they're sitting there, getting angry at each other. But they have to. But even if you're going to get angry, you have to have respect. You have to deal with the person, because if the person has a lack of respect for you, there's really nothing less than you can do to somebody than say you're not worth anything. You have no value.
Right.
And that's sort of where the lack of respect comes from. And what I think a really an important lesson that we learned from Rebbe Akiva's students is that we have to be very careful that the consequence of belittling your fellow man can be drastic and dire. And so we didn't publish this, but the Chavetz Chaim took it upon himself to sort of champion this ideal, and there's a lot of literature about how to. This is a daily companion about how to speak properly and how to respect your fellow man, so that we don't fall into the same trap that Rebbe Akiva students. You can imagine how great they were. Right. These were people that were studying at the feet of the biggest sage of his generation, and anyway, we can go through more stuff, more historical figures in Jewish history, which I think might be an interesting idea to do as well. Yeah. But please let us know of any questions. Obviously, linked at the bottom of the page, you'll find at the bottom of the post, you'll find what's it called? You'll
different
find
links to different books, that this book specifically, and then other books that kind of fall into that, and different age range of books as well. Whether you want to teach your kids about Lashon Hara and not using it, and how to really have that respect for others, or if you want a little daily reminder on your desk at work.
Exactly, perfect. And it chunks it out into like just single days. It's for the whole year, so it doesn't take a lot of time. So again, as I was telling Chana before, it's just a matter of perspective, how you look at your interactions with the people, and anyway, and use the code WISDOM, right?
Yes, WISDOM on Judaica.com. That'll get you 5% off your order.
5%. So that's a nice little savings.
Yeah.
And we look forward to, first of all, happy Lag Baom'er.
Yes.
And when you see me next, I will be a little bit more, I don't want to say clean shaven, though my wife would like me to, but let's say a little more groomed. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week.